Welcome to Femme Parler Podcast, where we are unpacking opinions and changing destinations. I am your host, Shirley Altador, where each week we will chat about how to rise strong out of all types of obstacles that come with relationships. Through personal life experiences and discussions ranging from infidelity, trust, forgiveness, sex, heartbreak, self-love, and so much more. I am passionate and obsessed to provide guidance to every woman to create a better life. Let's dive in, pull up a seat, make sure you're cozy, and get ready to be challenged and encouraged while you learn. With me, your virtual girlfriend. Welcome back to another episode of Femme Parler Podcast. Today, as we continue with story time, we do have a special guest with us today. We have Teri, who is a transformational life strategist, the founder of Creative Counseling Center and Talk with Teri, best-selling author of Be the Magic of You, Tools to Transform Your Life when a forward written by Jack Canfield. Oh my gosh, did I say that right? That is a tongue twister. For me, she is a premier success coach within E-Woman Network and a coach with Forbes. She has been featured in many television, podcasts, and radio shows, including Hay House. Welcome, Teri. How are you?
Thank you, Shirley. It's great to be here.
Wonderful.
Yes. So I'm Teri Karjala, and as you said, I've taken my 25 years of counseling experience. I've combined it with energy psychology, and then applied the principles of quantum physics. Now I work with, women entrepreneurs. But how I got here is when I was in high school, believe it or not, we had counselors that were for career counselors, but we did not have like any mental health counselors at our school. I went to a very tiny, small, rural town back in Kansas school. And so what they decided to do is they selected I was a sophomore at the beginning, so I was a peer counselor. So they selected 6 of us to become peer counselors. So as a sophomore, I went through all the training, it was basically counseling 101 as a sophomore, and I absolutely loved it. And so I was in charge of the 5th and 6th graders. And at one point, I had a 5th grade student come to me and tell me that her 6th grade friend was going to commit suicide. She had a plan. Her parents were going out of town. She was going to commit suicide on the Saturday night, and tell the babysitter she was sleeping in, and blah blah blah. And so we intervened, and the teachers that were ahead of me also intervened, and we were able to take this girl and get her into treatments. And, I think they ended up hospitalizing her for like a 24-hour period of time to make sure that she wasn't suicidal anymore and getting her treatment and stuff. But, that experience happening when I was, 15 years old was a game changer, because I was like, in some aspect, I feel like, wow, I helped this child, right? And so I immediately was like, I want to become a therapist. Like, I want to come and I want to help other kids not have to face this again. And it was it definitely changed the trajectory, because I was going to be either a hairstylist or an undercover cop in New York City, because that made a lot of sense. But you know what's so funny is I say that, and you know what? People open up to hairstylists, right? And they share their life stories with hairstylists, right? And the undercover detective, like, you have to kind of figure out like what's not working, what's working, like what is the root issue. So I do feel like I combined my hairstylist and my undercover detective wannabe New Yorker with becoming a therapist, right?
So Teri, I have a few questions
yes.
before you go on. So at 15, 16, the tender age, you were counseling the 5th and 6th graders. In my head, am I thinking of this like big brother, big sister? But you guys weren't going out. You were in a like location in an office or in a room?
Yes. So we were trained. So it was just really a peer counseling kind of situation where I would go down to the 5th and 6th grade and hang out with them for lunch and be like,
Oh,
hey.
okay.
And a lot of the most of the conversations in total transparency was like, my girlfriend, I'm having a little rift with this girl, and like, how can we talk about open communications or setting a boundary or saying no? Like, it was really surface level. Okay, that was the only kind of case that it was like, whoa,
Got
right? And so it was just more for like, if there was something bigger issues, then we would, send them, on to like someone else professionally outside the school district. But my counseling, we went to Washburn University, which is the Mecca in Kansas, to get the counseling. So we had like counseling 101 skills, like how to listen and how to, validate feelings and emotions. And it was really powerful. So that upbringing so young really kind of put me on this trajectory of this path. And so I ended up, obviously I had some other challenges, getting to where I was at, but I was in my own personal story, I was a first generation college student. Okay. So no one in my family had gone to college before. And so there was a lot that I didn't know. And so going through that process and then, finishing out my undergrad, and then I went into my master's. So I got a master's in community or in counseling as well. And then I opened up a private practice. So we can see, children. So our specialty is working with trauma. So we see children, adolescents, and adults that have experienced trauma. Mostly sexual abuse, physical abuse, witnessing domestic violence, homicides, suicides, pretty much anything traumatic that a person can go through. We see it at our office. And then that became about 5 years ago, that became really owner independent, where I built the company and I no longer have to, be there for it to run on its own. And then that's giving me the freedom to really do what I feel called to do, which is now working with other women entrepreneurs. Nice. Because now I've taken all that experience and now it's helping other entrepreneurs, because what I have found to be true in my experiences through networking and through speaking and all this is that entrepreneurs get out and they say, I'm going to start this, whatever, a project, this service, this, whatever it might be. And what happens is, for a lot of entrepreneurs, they get overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of what really goes into, creating a business, And so, and they always have these stories. What I've found is that there's usually like top 5 blocks, whether that's limiting beliefs or the imposter syndrome, getting self-sabotage, getting stuck in fear and overwhelm, or just getting, simply not knowing what the steps are to get forward. And so what I do is I help clear out those blocks to help people so that they can create a really successful business. Because if you are having an impact on, 5 people now, what would it be like for you to have an impact on 50 or 500 or 5,000 or 5 million? And I think right now we are in this beautiful time where we are asking the women, the men of this planet to really raise up into what is their passion, what is their purpose. Let's do this, because I think so many people need so many of our services, and we can't be the best kept secret and expect people to come and find us.
So if you could do me a favor, name those 5 blocks for me. I think I suffer a little bit from all of them. You said imposter syndrome.
Yeah. So we have the limiting beliefs, getting stuck in sabotage, and sabotaging our successes, getting stuck in fear, overwhelm and burnouts, and then the imposter syndrome. And there's obviously other blocks, but those are kind of the main ones that I feel like women entrepreneurs face when they set out and do, what their gift is to this planet. I mean, what your gift is to this planet, right? I mean, we are all, we all have these stories and these programmings that, within the first 8 years of our life, we have created this programming. And so for most of us, we go through this life with a certain type of programming. And for a lot of people, it serves us to a certain point, right? We were talking offline, and I was talking about like I'm a recovering perfectionistic, right? Because I used to be like but if I track that back, what happened was I didn't have an easy upbringing. I didn't have an easy childhood. And so I put on and I took on a lot of responsibilities because I had to be perfect. Because if I was perfect, I wouldn't be yelled at. I wouldn't be, I wouldn't be, told that I was stupid, that I was not good enough, right? So if I was perfect in my mind, then I wouldn't have these consequences, right? So I strive to become very perfect in everything. But as you know, that creates stress. That creates this, oh my goodness. And so then if we don't think we can be perfect at everything, then we oftentimes will block ourselves from doing something, right? Because we're not perfect. We don't have all the answers. And in entrepreneurship, there's no way we're going to know, all of it
we're not.
Before we get started.
Absolutely not.
And it's an evolution process, and it's an evolution process of ourselves. And I think when we go into entrepreneurship, like everything that we've been running from, hiding from, ignoring will get shown to us at some point.
Exactly. Now, before we dive into the question that we're going to discuss today, which is one mistake entrepreneurs make: conscious, unconscious mind, powerful strategies to create the life you love. So I wanted to ask you a question, because you brought up hair and being an undercover cop in New York. Where the hell did that come from? And did you ever, like on the side, pursue cosmetology?
No. You know what's so funny? I don't know. Like I think I was I don't know what it was. Maybe in a past life I was a cosmetologist, because I love everything girly, okay? Like nails and hair and
very well
whatever.
put together in front of me.
And no, okay, so the listeners cannot see my hair, but you're guys are gonna have to go check out my photos online now, because I call this the modern mullet. I got business on this side and party on this side.
She looks great, by the way. Don't listen to nothing she's saying. She is sitting in front of me, very well put together, hair done, with her cute little outfit and makeup, and I'm here in basic wear. Okay? And, you guys can't see us, but we're giving you a visual. So she looks great.
I know. Go check out my modern mullet, okay, folks? Yeah. So, but I just always, and this is so funny that you talk about this, because when I was in elementary school, I'm sorry, in high school, I would do all these fun things with nails, and I would do these nail arts. And before like nail art was really a thing, I would take acrylic paint. So the paint that you craft with, I would take that and I would paint my nails and make all these designs and funky stuff. And then I'd put clear gloss over it, and it would preserve it. And I'd go to school with all these funky nails. So I think I was probably a cosmetologist in a former life, right? And I don't know exactly where the undercover cop thing came from, because I don't know. I don't know where that came from. Honestly,
Gotcha.
I don't know where that came from.
Okay, very interesting.
Just random. I think because like I'm an adventure. I'm like an adventurista, and I love the adrenaline that adventures bring. So I'm like, ooh, that'd be like really fun. Like you'd be like, ooh, I'm like, like you get to like, I don't know, like it would just like be exciting and fun and different every time.
Gotcha. That was another thing in your past life.
So you can psychoanalyze me later, okay?
So very interesting. I wanted to ask you if you feel like diving in. You said you had a rough childhood. What do you mean by rough?
I brought up in a family, and let's just we'll put it nicely, that, I was never good enough. Right. I had my biological father was very verbally abusive. And so, on top of that, I always talk about the brain and how the brain, locks in these stories. So I had that going on at home. And then I was at school, and I was extraordinarily shy. I was a very shy kid. And I had a learning disability. So I was dyslexic on top of a couple speech impediments. So you can see this picture being painted really quickly here of like how difficult that could be. So come my second grade, and because I was in a small school system, they didn't really have the resources to help me, because I didn't fit into the bucket. Got it. Right. And they didn't have the resources for me. And so in second grade, I actually was held back in second grade. And that's a story that I don't share very often, because I had so much shame and guilt around that, right? Because they couldn't figure me out. So they're like, you know what, let's just keep her behind. So in a small school system, it's not like these large systems now where if someone, gets held back, usually no one pays attention and gets it seen.
Exactly.
But when you only have 18 in your graduating class,
You're going to,
it gets noticed.
people are going to
It
realize
gets noticed,
that's
right?
the girl.
And so I had this stuff going on at home. And so I had created a story about I was not good enough. And then at school, I would have kids, and kids can be really mean. Let's be real. And these kids would come to me and say, you must be really stupid because you failed second grade. You're dumb. You're an idiot, right? And so I had that going on at school. And I remember I would always just try to like pull it together and put my strong face, tough face forward. But I remember in my senior year, everyone who had moved on beyond me, so second grade, because we followed each other through high school, right? And it was their senior year, they graduated, or I'm sorry, my junior year, they graduated. My senior year, like it was like the best year of my life because I no longer had these kids keeping it in present facing, like bringing it up to me. Because they would say things like this, like, well, you should be graduating when you're 17 or 18. Why are you 19 when you're graduating? And so it was really one of those things that I had to like go deep within and be like, because I don't share this story very often of that process because it was I had so much shame around it. But I realized, there's a lot of folks. I teach some classes at a university, and there's students that deal with dyslexia. There's students that deal with bullying. There's students that deal with, and I'm like, you know what? Let me share this because maybe there's something in this for someone else to take away from this conversation because it wasn't an easy time, but it made me more stronger, more resilient, more powerful. And so now if there was someone that says something to me, it's like, I kind of just let it, okay, well, that's them, not me.
But you're the prime example of what other people think about you does not matter because look what you have taken your life and brought it to be. You're the CEO of your own company. You've brought the company to the position that it is operating itself. That is just awesome. And then you did say you were the first generation to attend college. So after senior year, you didn't let any of that negativity hold you back because you could have easily said, I'm not good enough and I'll just stay here in this little town and do absolutely nothing. But you didn't. Well,
and I'll be honest. So where some of the little dysfunction comes in at is I got I'm going to prove you wrong. And I always tell people there's certain behaviors, actions, things that serve us, a story, if you will serve us to a certain place and it will stop serving us. And so that served me. The prove you wrong served me well because it motivated me. It was the fuel that allowed me to overcome a lot of challenges, even in getting to college, because I had a person of power tell me that going to school for a counseling position was a waste of time and I wouldn't make money doing this. And I had this person that I trusted, and then as soon as I said, I'm doing this, right? And I said, I'm committing to do this, he became dead to me from the school.
Gotcha.
And he didn't support me. He didn't help me to get scholarships. He didn't help me, anything with the college. So I had to figure it out. And I think the greatest gift that came with was that it instilled in me that everything is figure-outable. Everything can be figured out. Like you can figure this out, right? And so I probably could have received, the thing that I was upset about is I could have received some scholarships that I didn't realize were there. But it's like life lessons, right? But it's like, you know what? I could figure it out, right? I figured it out and was able to make the most of it. And throughout this, and I realized that there was a lot of people that I met on this path to really help me and mentor me through this process, right? And so going back to where that, push, where that I'll prove you wrong was, it served me up until probably about my end of my master's degree. But I was doing it for someone else, right? I felt like I was like, wait, I did this to kind of, for lack of the better words, like say, F off, I got this, right? and I'm going to do this. And so then when I started my master's degree, I was like, you know what? I'm doing this for me. I'm doing this because I matter. I'm doing this because I want to create this, right? And so where those behaviors served me, they, again, as you go through life, some of those stop serving you because that force energy, that force, like, I'm going to make it work,
Exactly.
right? Serves you only to a certain place. So I'm grateful that happened. And then it's like, okay, now I get to step back into truly my authentic power and step into my power without having to do it for somebody else or in spite of somebody else, right? Like, I get to do this for me. And so my master's degree was really focused on doing it for me and proving it to myself that I could do it, right?
That's good.
And now I've become a lifelong student. So my learning did not stop there. I've continued to learn and expand, and I'm constantly learning because I think that if we still have a heartbeat and we have a body, we are in, student mode always.
I do agree with you. And especially not saying that if you have a 9 to 5 or if you're in a corporate world, you're not still learning. But I do believe that entrepreneurs especially are consistently learning day in and day out, wearing multiple hats, because when you're running a business, it's no different than if you're going to your 9 to 5 and the boss is, whoever your boss is, he or she is running that business. Roles just change. Now you're running your business. God knows how many people you may have under you, but you have to be consistently learning, because let's say you don't have somebody to cover that person that may be off for a week. Guess what? The boss is going to have to step in, because that is a good leader, and that's what a good leader does.
Absolutely.
So now, when you were getting your master's, did you already have your business up and running? When did the business start?
No, I actually started the business. Interesting enough, I was like clearly this overachiever, and I was getting licensed for 2 licenses at the same time, an LPC and an LMFT, because in my funny little head, I thought we were going to move to California, and California at the time didn't recognize certain licenses in Colorado. So I was, saying, okay, I'll just do both of the licenses at the same time. And that way, when we move to California, I'll have it ready to go. All I have to do is transfer it. Like, right?
Who's we and what happened?
My husband and I.
So
yeah, my husband
Colorado
and I.
must have been college, because at some point you left Kentucky. How'd you end up in Colorado?
I was in Kansas.
Okay.
And then moved to Kansas and then went to Colorado.
Got it. Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes. So my husband and I, it was funny because our boyfriend at the time. So we, that's a whole nother story how we met. But we met in marriage and family class, and we were the 38th couple to meet and marry in that class. Long story. But when we were dating, and we would be like, let's go to dinner, and like, okay, who gets to choose what we're going to dinner or whatever. So we would take, and we would either play a game of darts or just take 1 dart each, and whoever hit the highest point, right, would get to choose. So when we moved out to here, or when we moved, we put up the United States map, and he got a dart and I got a dart. One landed in Colorado and one landed in Arizona. We're like, Arizona is way too hot, so let's go to Colorado. So we ended up moving out here based on a dart. And so then we're like, well, let's live here for a year, and then we'll move to California. Well, it's been 20, I don't know how many years now, 21 years, 22 years. We're still in Colorado. We absolutely love it. So we're not going anywhere. So I actually ended up dropping some licenses because I'm like, I don't need to carry these licenses because we're not moving to California. So funny. But when I was getting both licenses, my mentor at the time said, how are you going to get all these hours? And I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, well, what if you opened up your private practice and got hours for your LMFT over here, and then got your LPC hours from the agency that you're working in? I'm like, you can do that? He's like, yes. So I was being mentored, and I had a supervisor for my so I opened a private practice and was seeing probably about 10 to 15 clients a week in the private practice. And then I was working agency work, so I was working probably 40 plus hours there as well. But I loved it. I absolutely loved what I was doing. I did that for a couple years. And then at some point, the person that I was sharing office space with, she was like, you know what? I think I want to go into my own business, and I want to expand and go into a bigger business. I'm like, I think I want to do the same thing. So we both split away, and we were able to, I that was the first leap of my business career, because I went from paying $260 in rent, okay, per month. I was paying $260 a month because we were her and I were sharing
So
this
that
office
was your
space.
portion.
Yeah, that was my portion. And then I moved down to DTC area in Colorado, and my rent went from $260 to $1,100.
Was that affordable, or did you just say, I'm going to figure out how to make it work?
Like, I'm going to figure it out. And I was like, I don't know how this is going to work, but we figured it out.
Good.
We figured it out. We figured it out. And it just kept, and then it was just like every, section, I just kind of took bigger and bigger leaps of faith. And you know what? Knock on wood, they've always worked out.
But that's all it takes. You believed in yourself, Teri.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it all starts with you, and you believed in yourself. You went from $268 to not half of that, but almost triple that, to $1,100 a month. Actually, I think that's more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more. Yeah. More than triple what your rent was. And literally this woman is like, I'll figure it out. So every month,
I'll figure it out.
Until you got to that comfortable place, you had to figure, I got to pay this $1,100. I got to figure out how to pay this $1,100.
Yes.
And sometimes that's what you got to do. Where there's a will, there's a way. And you can always figure it out.
And sometimes it's about negotiating, right? Because I negotiated 6 months free rent.
Oh, look at you.
And I know, I have strategies. So if anyone wants to know how to negotiate, I've done it every time I've renewed my lease.
This is good, girl. Well, this is now what we're going to get into, because we're going to talk about what is the one mistake entrepreneurs make? Conscious, and then it's unconscious mind, powerful strategies to create the life you love.
So I would say the biggest challenge that entrepreneurs make, in my opinion, is it comes back to mindset. It really does come back to mindset, because, that quote, whether you think you can or think you can't, by Henry Ford, it is absolutely true, right? And so when we are in the entrepreneur world, there's a lot of things that fall on our shoulders, and we got to have that belief that this is going to come to fruition, right? And so if we are telling ourselves that we can't, if we are telling ourselves it's too difficult, it's too hard, if we're sabotaging, like, I had a client the other day, and she's just, she is so close to taking her business really to the next level, but she is finding every excuse, every distraction, everything to take her out of alignment with really doing it. Because here's the thing, if she expands her business, she will have to be seen for the very first time. And that scares her to death, to be seen and to have a voice, to be really heard in the world. And so again, that was a previous script that was playing out for her. So as soon as we started clearing out that script for her, and then she's like, oh my goodness. And then the other day she says, I can't wait to speak, because I encourage my clients that, I say there's two ways of building a business. One is the marathon way. I build a business on the marathon way. It just takes a lot of time. It's the connections, it's the networking, it's the, the partnerships, the collaborations, it's all of those things, which takes a lot of time. And then the sprint is either utilizing technology or other types of funnels that can fill your business, and or speaking. And speaking is a really fast way to fill a funnel. And so I encourage clients that are ready, if they know that they're ready to have an impact. Like I always tell people that I love working with the creative entrepreneurs that know in their heart of hearts that they meant to have an impact. And these are the people that are meant to play bigger in the world. And so being seen, like, I don't know about you, but you can't be the best kept secret and also be seen and heard in the world. Like, you just can't. Like, there would be no Starbucks, there would be no Targets, there would be, right? Because they'd be so insignificant and so small that we wouldn't know it unless we lived in that community, right? So if we're going to create a business that is known, or we're going to create a brand that's known, we can't be the Tony Robbins of the world if no one knows about us, right? And that's about stepping into becoming an influencer. And how do we become an influencer of our own brand if that's what you're looking to do and have a bigger impact? So, whatever those stories are, and we all have different stories. We all have a different upbringing, and whatever those stories are, what happens is, as an entrepreneur, we bring them with us in the entrepreneur world. And so, like I said earlier, anything that we are being challenged by, I don't know, pulled down by, it's going to show up, and it's going to show up in our business. And if we are ready to, really have an impact, we've got to look at those things. We've got to let those things no longer have power over us.
Yeah, I like how you said you can't want to be seen, but how did you phrase it? But yet don't want to be heard. How did you phrase that?
Well, just not being the best kept secret, right? You have to be able to be seen and heard in order to have an impact.
Yes. And here's the interesting thing. And how the heck did I just lose my train of thought? I'd be thinking of too many questions all at once. This is the problem. I was going to say something after I said that to you.
Do you want me to give you a tool for it? I'll give you a tool for this.
Give me the tool, and hopefully it should help me. I was going to ask you this really good question. Go, give me the tool.
It happens to me too. So take your hands like this. Go ahead and cross which hand is on. So I'm having her cross over her hands, left or and then cross your hands in the middle. And then which thumb is on top, left or right?
Oh, left.
Okay, perfect. You're like me. So take your left hand out like this, or take both of your hands out like this, like Frankenstein. And then take your left hand over your right like this. And I might be opposite. So you're right, you're good. And then go ahead and have your heads go clear down like this towards the floor. And then hook her back around like that. Yep. And then hook them. Yep. Perfect. And then hook up like this. And then take your left leg over your right leg, over either at your knee or at your ankle. And then sit like this. This is called the whole brain hookup. So for the listeners listening, please don't be driving while you're doing this. That's just my personal disclaimer. But go ahead and look up the whole brain hookup exercise, because this actually will help you remember like what you're going to say, or if like things are on the tip of your tongue, or it just is so many great things. It helps ground the brain. It helps bring up reptilian part of the brain up to the frontal cortex of the brain. So yummy things that this does. And so you'll want to hold this for at least a minute. Okay. And then I'll let you know when we can unhook. But this is also great for you to do before you hop on a show, or before you take a major stage. For anyone listening, this is a great tool to use in your life.
This is awesome. I've never thought of this.
I know, you're like, what the heck? Teri is not invited back on the show again.
Because you don't think of things like that.
It's just little brain hacks. I love teaching clients. Everything that I teach my clients you can do under 2 minutes. Most of them are done under 30 seconds. Because I don't know about you, but I don't have time to be wasting. And so there's certain things that we can do for the brain, and we can hack into the brain and allow the brain to be in alignment with what we're doing. And sometimes it's very quickly. So I'm going to have you unhook your legs and unhook your hands, and then just hold like this. So I'm just having her hold just her fingertips. And if you want to, you can set those in your lap. And then we just want to hold that like that for a minute as well.
Should we be talking, or we should not talk?
Yeah, we can talk. We can absolutely talk.
Okay.
And we can talk
and then keep our hand like this. But these are techniques that you even do, because you have a podcast. So before you start your podcast, you do these techniques.
I have several techniques before I take a major stage. There's a lot of things that I do, and I sprinkle in, I used to think that so I incorporate energy and energy work all the time in my life and my business, all the time. And, I see it as like self-care for me. I used to think, getting a massage once a month was my self-care. And then I realized, wait, we got to be doing this every day. So there's things that I do from my morning routine all through my day, and then even into my evening routine that's incorporating energy. I just realized that there was incorporating the laws of the universe. Most of the listeners are familiar with the law of attraction. That's one law. And there's lots of other laws. But if we can incorporate the universal laws into our practices, it's just so much easier. Like, we can work smarter, not harder, and we can incorporate a lot of energy tools. I have a client that I'm getting ready to start with next week, and I'm so excited because she's created a successful business. She's also very
Mm-hmm.
spiritual and has a lot of spiritual practices that she
Mm-hmm.
does, but she does not combine them with her business. I'm going to make a reference book. It's about 95% done, where I have like these little tabs, and then it's like, oh, I'm going to a networking event. What do I need to do to get my brain on track and so that I'm become this magnetic
Mm-hmm.
attractor? Oh, I'm getting ready to take a stage. What do I need to be doing to prep for
Mm-hmm.
that? Oh, I'm getting ready to go on to a podcast or television or radio. What do I
Mm-hmm.
do? And have all these like tools. And so it's like, it's flipped back. So I'm just stating that now so that I'm holding myself accountable for actually creating this product.
You know how many speakers I've seen do this? I guess this is something I've seen people do this, and I just thought like, they're just looking for something to do with their hands. But I've never
Yeah.
thought like there's a reason behind this.
They might be doing it for that reason. I don't
I
know.
think so. It's not consistently, but I've seen it
Yeah.
enough to be like, when you pay attention to body
Hmm.
language.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I know. I'm always talking with my
I
hands
do
like,
as well. I'm always,
I'm a fake
do you feel
Italian.
as though it makes you more comfortable though, Terry?
I think what it does for me is I naturally do
Mm-hmm.
it. And if someone were to tell me to put my hands underneath my
Mm-hmm.
seat and not, I would stop talking. Like my brain just, it shuts off my brain waves. Like there's some connection to me speaking and my hands. Because if I put them under, I'm like, like I'm totally like brain dead. Like
I could
seriously.
totally agree with that because,
And so I think one of the things what it does for my
Mhm.
audience though is it brings a lot of energy. Like that is one thing that I definitely bring to a
Mhm.
stage is I bring fun and humor, but I also bring the energy in that regards too.
Now, here's the other thing I wanted to tell you. The five things that you had brought up before when I told you to repeat them. What's
Yeah.
good strategies you have for either one or two of those? And why did you break them up like that?
I think so. Let me ask that second question first. The reason why I think I broke him up like that is because like that's what was coming. Like those are the things that most of the entrepreneurs, and I
Mm,
work with a lot of high achieving women
got it.
entrepreneurs. Those are the things that kept repetitively keep coming
Got
to
it.
me. And it was, and a lot of times it's like this, that then I would say the top
Uh-huh.
two, maybe the top three, really is the limiting
Mm-hmm.
beliefs. Those are the previous
Mm-hmm.
programming, right? Self sabotage is really high up there
Mm-hmm.
too. And also, even for the high achieving woman that I work with, the imposter
Yeah.
syndrome, because we get to this place and space of like, who am I? I'm a fraud. I don't know enough,
I want to comment
And
on something
so,
about that, right? That
yeah,
exact thing you just said. So I told you I'm going to be working with a coach. And I was talking to her, telling her my goals, what I'm looking to achieve. And she immediately said, "You should do some coaching." I said, "Lady, did you just hear what I wanted to do? I'm trying to monetize. I am not a coach. I'm not." And she immediately said, "And this is me. This is prime example imposter syndrome." She said, "Shirley, I don't care what you choose to call it, consultant, whatever special name you want to give it to make it sound fancy, but you run a podcast. You're going into a year of doing a podcast. You're a coach. Get that out your head." And I'm looking at her. I'm like, she's just promoting me. And I'm like trying on here on this call, trying to figure out how to monetize my business. And she's calling me something that I'm not. But again, it's the imposter syndrome because in my head, I'm like, I can't call
yeah,
myself that. People are going to think I'm loony. So that's just the prime example of what you're talking about because
yeah,
I am crippling my own self to not move further in my business because of my simple minded thinking. You can't call me a coach. That's
yeah,
not what I am.
yeah. And I will say, because you asked for like a tool, and I'm going to I'm going to do a kind of a global tool, so that way, people that are suffering from the imposter syndrome versus negative
Mm-hmm.
thinking versus all these other things, something that you can do is when something is showing up
Mm-hmm.
for you in any of those categories or something else, like if you can give him or her a name, like let's objectify and project this outward, okay? So I'll give you an example. When I speak, I get nervous. And for a lot of, I mean, everyone gets
Mm-hmm.
nervous when they speak, but mine was so bad that would like take over my body, right? And so I would call her Revy, okay, because she revved me up, right?
Oh.
So here's little Revy, and now her and I, when we were first starting, we were like arch enemies. Did not like each other. She was defiant. She was, whatever, and she would just show up whenever she wanted to show up, and But then once we started to work together, I was like, okay, she's not so bad, right? So the first thing I want you to do is just acknowledge, okay? So give her a name, him or her a name, okay? I have one of my clients, and his if you break down, he called his because his was about negative thinking, and he would just like stinky thinking. He called his Richard Cranium. So if you take down Richard, what's the shortened word for Richard?
Dick?
It's dick. Yep. And if you have cranium, what's another word for cranium?
Brain.
You have head. So you have dick head. So his was Richard Cranium. And I was like, I love it.
God.
He's like, Richard Cranium showing up today. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's funny.
Good. That's very creative in how he figured that
creative,
out.
Right? Yeah. So come up with a name.
I like that,
right?
Terry. That's what I need to do.
Come up with a name. Yes. Come up with a name. And it can be like, I don't know. What am I thinking of? Christina? Critical Christina. It could be, negative Nancy, whatever you want to call her. Okay. I don't know.
No, I get you.
Women. But and so give it a name. Okay. Then and invite and acknowledge when she shows up or when he shows up, and just say, oh, Revy, you're showing up today. Oh, thank you. And as soon as we acknowledge it, the emotion that's happening in our body, as soon as we acknowledge what's happening, we're like, okay, I'm feeling really fearful. Fearful Frida is showing up, right? Okay, Frida, I got you. Okay. And she's just trying to tell you something, right? Emotionally, there's nothing wrong with emotions. Emotions are, if you will think about emotions as our internal guidance system, it is giving us information. It is giving us information. Like if I'm fearful walking down a dark alley at night, I want to be fearful. Why? Because it's going to make me more aware. I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to walk with confidence. I'm going to have my keys out ready for me to get into my car. I'm going to be really aware of my surroundings, right? So emotions are just showing up to give us information about our environment and about our surroundings, okay? So we can just make this a little bit easier for everyone, okay? So we give her a name, we acknowledge her or him when he shows up. Hey, I greet her. I'm like, hey, Revy, we're here. Okay, right? And then as soon as we acknowledge that, a lot of times it'll just let the emotions already, okay? And then the next time is like, I thank her for showing up. I thank her. It's like, you know what, Revy, thank you so much for showing up. I know that every time we start this talk, you want to be up there in front and center. And now I set a boundary. Okay. I have boundary setting with Revy. And in the beginning, it used to be 2 minutes. She'd always have 2 minutes of my talk. Because when I'd start a talk, I always start with humor. And as soon as I get that first laugh from the audience, I'm like, good, right? Now 2 minutes seems a little long nowadays. So I'm like, Revy, you can have 30 minutes or 30 seconds. So now Revy and I have this agreement that she can only come for the first 30 seconds of my talk. She shows up, she's there, she's with me, and I thank her, and I'm like, okay. And then I was like, you know what, Revy, I got this. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for sharing with me. We got this, right? So now Revy and I are like two peas in a pod. Like we work well together. She's here to support me. I thank her for showing up, to showing me like, hey, you got to stay motivated. You got to get up. You got to be ready, I'm like, I got this, right? So if we acknowledge and we invite them along the journey and we don't make them wrong, we just make them right and say, you know what, I get it. You're trying to give me some information. We can just dissipate a lot of whatever the emotion, anxiety, fear, angst, whatever that might be that's coming up for us. So hopefully that's a tool that people can use as kind of a global tool.
I like this. I do like this. It makes total sense. And now this is my homework for today that Teri has assigned us and many others who are listening out there. I'm going to give my imposter syndrome a name, and then, And
when she shows up, say, hey, welcome to the party. What's your story, right? And, you have a conversation with her. I mean, it sounds silly. I mean, people do think I'm a little,
No,
they think I have
no.
3 heads. And I'm okay with that, okay? I'm okay with having 3 heads. But it just helps, bring it back down, because then we can have a conversation. Like, you have to ask her, what are you afraid of me not
Yeah.
knowing? Right? What are you afraid of me? Because ego hops in there, and ego is like, oh my goodness, Shirley, we want to keep you small and
Yeah.
safe. Because small and safe
It's
is
safe.
I stay in my comfort zone.
Exactly.
As soon as you take a step out of that comfort zone, it's like, whoa, who do you think
You're
you
doing too
are?
much, girl.
What are you doing? You're doing too much. And so, you can say, you know what, I got this. It's okay. What if we start at a small step,
Mhm.
okay, and take one small step out, and then when we grow our the comfort zone, if we are just taking what I usually do, a little drawing, and if we take one step out, we expand the comfort zone, okay? And we keep doing that. We keep expanding and expanding and expanding. And if our target is right here, we might take 3 steps to get
Mhm.
there. But if you go from here to this really fast, the ego is like, oh, too much.
Gotcha.
But if I take some baby steps, it's going to feel safe. It's going to feel supported. And I can take my time, depending on what my targets are
Exactly.
in growing and expanding out there. Because each time we take a step out of our comfort zone, we start to reinforce the brain that we are safe, we are okay. And that becomes evidence. So I always tell my clients, write down the evidence, track the
Mhm.
evidence, because all of this yummy evidence that's showing up that says, oh, I still have a
Mhm.
heartbeat. I did not die from this experience. Oh, you know what? I did not lose my business. It actually did the
Mhm.
opposite, because that fear, will keep us staying small. And like we were talking about, I think even before we came on here, it's like, you hiring this coach, that it's time to hire a coach because you are ready to expand.
Yes.
And it's going to be scary. And there's times I want to pee my
Yeah.
pants, and it's okay. Like, it's okay.
You're absolutely right. It is scary, but I don't even know what exactly am I scared of. I think I'm scared because of the big imposter syndrome that I need to give a name to, followed by the limiting beliefs, because who do you think you are, Shirley? Which all falls under the imposter syndrome. How dare you think you can pursue this? And this is what's going on in my head. So,
And we can fight back. We can absolutely fight back. And we can say, you know what? I hear you. And
and
I'm going to do it
yeah.
this way. I hear you. And I got
Yeah.
this. I have a support system. And the more we find more evidence that we can have it. So document the
Mhm.
evidence. When things go right, when things go well, document this process. So when you are at the end of the day, I have like 2 or 3 notebooks now that are full of
Mhm.
evidence that says, so if I have a bad day, guess what I'm pulling up? I'm pulling up my evidence journal that says, gosh, you did this. I did this. I created this. I did this. I overcame that. I did. And I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. I'm a badass.
Look at everything
right
I
here. It says it
did.
in documentation. And actually I wrote it. So like take that, because that ego, we can find way more evidence to support the yummy, juicy stuff that you have to bring to the table versus all the negative stuff that is trying to keep us small and insignificant.
This was awesome. You provide some awesome tools, especially the 2 tactics. Do they have names?
The first one that I did, so that was one tool. It is called the whole brain hookup.
Whole brain,
So if you do
WHOLE,
hookup.
whole brain hookup. Got it.
Yes, whole brain
Okay.
hookup. Yep, and it's through Brain Gym.
Okay.
So if people look up whole brain hookup, you can look it up and see. There's 2 parts. The first part is the hookup, and the second part is like just the fingertips.
Okay.
that we
Whole
did.
brain hookup.
So both.
I
Yep.
like that.
So both parts.
That's
Yeah.
good.
And it's so great. It's so great to start your day. It's so great to end your day. It's fantastic. You can lay in bed and do it. And most of the time you'll
These are
drift off.
great things to implement into your life, Teri. I've never even thought about this. And then this is now going to make me do things differently when I start my podcasts. To limit me forgetting stuff in my brain, kind of thinking of ask her this, say this. And I'm like, slow down, brain. I can't write all these things down. But I like this because this should help me. And sometimes I had a podcast with a woman the other day, and she just kept remembering stuff and naming all these books. I'm like, girl, if I read a book a year ago, I'd have to reread it.
Yeah. Yeah.
reread it just to kind of just, remember. And then once I start going through the pages, it'll come back to me. But it gets dormant in my brain. Some people, I feel like they could read a book 10 years ago and it's still active.
Yes. So there's some brain hacks for sure that we can do to help the brain stay on track with us.
All right, Teri. So we are going to end today, and I definitely want to thank you for being a guest. You provided us with some great tools and some wonderful knowledge that made me realize things within myself and stop trying to be a perfectionist, because you are a recovering perfectionist. Even though this was the
go for 95%.
Yes, and I love that,
because your 95% is probably more than most people's 95%. So if you just go, and I find myself, even when I want to go into like perfectionist zone, I'm like, nope, 95. And I'm like, I just do it because it's so much more powerful if you just take action, because you're not going to have it perfect, and if I do it, of course you don't want to half-ass something if it's not going to like be good for your brand. But if it's 95%, go for it. Got it.
All right. So we are going.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shirley.
You're welcome, Teri. So thank you guys for listening. As you always know, love yourself, voice yourself, and be yourself. Until the next podcast, guys, have a great one. Thanks for tuning in to Femme Parler Podcast. If you want to continue the conversation or share your takeaways, I want to hear from you. Head on over to the website or join our Facebook community and comment your favorite part of the show or share your thoughts. I want to hear what you have to say. Don't forget to rate and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Chat with you next week.